Welcome to another thing about Tartan, and tonight I am so pleased to welcome Alexander Fraser from right here in Edinburgh to tell us a little bit more about his Fraser heritage, his Toastmaster skills, and his lockdown project helping his brother restore a castle. Welcome, Alexander. So it's New Year's Eve, Hogmanay here in Scotland, and I am delighted to have joining with me on And Another Thing About Tartan today, Alexander Fraser. Alexander comes from right here in Edinburgh and is going to tell us all about his Fraser heritage, which is, of course, very pertinent to our Clan of the Month celebrations for January, all about the Frasers. And he's going to also share with us his Toastmaster skills, his lockdown project helping his brother restore. Can't wait. So, welcome, Alexander. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank
So,
you.
tell us, are you a born and bred Edinburgh boy then, or how did you come to be in Edinburgh?
So my father worked in the whiskey industry, which makes me nice and Scottish, but his job forced us to move around as a family quite a lot. So I was actually born in Glasgow, even though I don't really sound like it.
No.
But from a young age, we moved from Glasgow, then to Stirling, then up to the northeast, which is whiskey territory. Spent a lot of time in the Northwest Highlands. Then went to university in Glasgow. I arrived in Edinburgh in 2013 to take on the role of guest manager at the Balmoral Hotel.
Very good. And so, what would you say? What do you love most about Edinburgh? What's your favourite things, or Glasgow, or wherever? Have you got? What do you think makes it special, and why do people come here? Why do people come and stay at places like the Balmoral?
Well, fun enough, when I was in Glasgow, I was there. I was at sometime after university. A lot of its beautiful buildings were demolished in the 60s in what they thought was progress at the time. So it lost a lot of its architectural heritage. Edinburgh did a little bit of that, but kept so many of these old crumbling buildings. And rather than knocking them down, particularly on the Royal Mile, they restored them. So we have this amazing city that people, when they step out of the train station at Waverley, they stop and stare, similar to Times Square in New York, and they just look around and go, oh my God, this is amazing. And there's lots of little hidden streets that people don't often visit. If anyone's ever here, I actually say, see the Royal Mile, see all the museums, but actually move around and see where people live. Go to some of the Georgian streets and some of the little cobbled lanes and muses that no one ever sees. That to me is the real Edinburgh.
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree, and I think we having the shop in Edinburgh, we then people come and visit the shop, and then they say, where should we go? Where do we see the real Edinburgh? And even places like the Dean Village, which is just down from our shop, we love sending people down there. It's just a
Mm.
bit more. You don't necessarily find it. It's not on the standard tourist trail.
Well, with obviously the tram works are being extended from city centre right the way down through Leith. So my flat sits on Leith Walk. So I've been excitedly watching the tram works for the last few months, and they've just started laying track a few meters up from my flat. So it's almost the beginning of the end. But I think once that network is extended all the way down to Leith, Leith will suddenly become a bigger part of Edinburgh. Just now, it's
Yeah,
almost like an island that people don't visit.
yeah.
You don't see as many visitors in Leith as you do up in town during, say, the festival.
Hmm. Yeah, and I love Leith with all the, well, I love water, so I love that whole kind of beside the sea thing. But the, yeah, the cobbles and things down there, it has a real character all of its own, doesn't it? So until COVID struck, you worked at the Market Street Hotel, so winner of two Scottish Hotel Awards in 2020, and from my reading described as a modern take on baronial. So can you tell us a bit more about the hotel and why it's special and any good stories you've got from your time working there?
Certainly. So, as of I think it's about a day's time is my anniversary of a year. If anyone's familiar with the skyline of Edinburgh city centre, you've got these beautiful buildings in the old town. And up until a few years ago, you had coming out of Waverley again, staring over at the view that everyone loves. You had this horrible concrete car park that was only inhabited by pigeons, and it was all boarded up with chipboard and just did not look very nice. So Edinburgh City Council pushed really, really hard to get that demolished, and they did, and then got it pushed forward for a hotel. Much to the upset of the pigeons, who still think they live there. These are now the of previous occupants, and they just circle the city looking for their old home. But yeah, so you have these lovely Victorian buildings like the City Arts Centre, what used to be the Coburn Hotel, the bottom of Coburn Street, which is now the office of the International Festival.
Yeah.
We have designed, I say we, JM Architects designed a beautiful, very modern building, which some people love, some people hate, because you've got it juxtaposed to the Victorian architecture. But when we demolished the old car park, we discovered vaults underneath as part of the old town. And supposedly the site of the first Chambers dictionary being printed in Edinburgh. But in those vaults, we found old beer bottles and oyster shells. So in the bar, it's a champagne bar, but we do sell beer and oysters just as a homage to that.
Oh,
but it's owned by Carlton Hotels, who are a Dutch company, who also work with a number of firms in Britain, bars and restaurants. And what they've tried to do is, yes, we have a general manager, but she's encouraged to run it as if she's an entrepreneur, as if she owns it, it's her hotel. So anything we want to do, from cocktails to menus to, say, a gift for a guest in a room, we can do it. But it doesn't need to be on brand per se. It's our brand. It's not the entire chain's brand. So the design, from a tartan point of view, is fantastic. So prior to opening, the designer, I believe they were Dutch, and they just went to the tartan mill at the top of the Royal Mile and picked about 40 tartans, none of which are necessarily related to Edinburgh. Some are, but just like the look of them. So she's gone for style. And we've put a splash of tartan in every single room, but it's different. And it's not in your face. So we're trying not to make it look like a castle might have back in the day, draped with tartan. You've just got it embroidered on the back of the chairs, as a flash in the curtains. And then throughout the hotel, we've got large Gaelic phrases and symbols. And so as an example, we've got haggis, which is haggis, it's almost spelled similarly. Thistle, which is cleuren. But these large images are there. So as you walk around the hotel, it's just subtly Scottish, so that you're not bombarded with it, but it's still, you're in Scotland. When you get to the bar, we have 5 little fireplaces that are gas fires, and they sit at 5 different heights. And if you have OCDC, it happens a lot. People will be having a nice glass of champagne, and they'll say, "Excuse me, those fireplaces are annoying me." And you'll say, "Why is that?" "Well, they're all at different heights." But it's the first 5 notes of "O Flower of Scotland" in sheet music. And unless you're told that, you don't notice it, but it's very, very nice.
Some very individual touches then.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I've not been in the hotel, so I look forward to visiting.
I'm sure I can shout you a glass of champagne. Come in.
Oh, it's good. And so you are also multi-talented. You are a Toastmaster and Master of Ceremonies. So what does this entail, and what kind of events do you get involved in?
So over the last, I'd maybe say 8 years, because I'm in my mid-30s now, many of my peer group have started getting married. And what I've found is the change these days is less to have a large formal wedding, is more to hire somewhere like a self-catered castle with a number of cottages, and very much you're left to your own devices. So in those weddings, the bride and groom don't necessarily always organize everything themselves on the day, because they're busy, they're chatting to everyone. So it falls to the maid of honor or the best man. And I've been best man more times than I would care to count. But you basically run the day. So I did that. Obviously, I didn't charge my friends. I was a good friend. But you end up running the day for them. So after doing, I think between 2017 and 2018, I went to 22 weddings in 1 year. And by the end of it, I quite like this. This is good fun. So when I was at the Balmoral, we had a fantastic Toastmaster called Bob. And he's still there. He's really, really good, charismatic, friendly. But his key thing was that it's not his wedding day. He's in a bright red jacket, but he's not in all the photographs. He's not making thousands of announcements. He's just in, says what he needs to say, and then disappears. If things are going wrong, he will fill the gap with a little bit of fun and chatting to people around the room. So I had a chat with him, and then he recommended a Toastmastering guild in London. So in January this year, just before the the pandemic struck, I was down in London. Did a full week's very intensive course on every type of wedding you can imagine, types of dinner, auctions, just to give you the formal training around it. And obviously, a week, you're not going to learn everything in a week. There's a lot of additional reading to do. You need to shadow a number of events. So I managed to shadow a Burns supper, one of my fellow guild members in Edinburgh for Burns nights, which was amazing. And you just have to stand back and support that Toastmaster, but really learn the trade. So once you've done that, I will get my official membership to the guild once they have come to watch one of my weddings. So despite the fact I've done lots of them, I don't get the full medallion yet. So that's still to come.
Wow, I didn't realise it was such a formal, qualification and training, and that's very impressive.
Well, there's quite a few people that might just jump onto eBay, they buy the outfit and say, yes, my name's Sandy, I'm a Toastmaster. What I try and do is set myself aside from that and say, look, I'm qualified. If I perhaps got sick and you book me for your wedding, the guild will then send another Toastmaster.
Okay.
All the work that you do prior to the wedding, so you'll meet with the bride and bridegroom, you work out the announcements, you work out their itinerary, you work out what you're going to do on the day, little things that need done. There's bouquets of flowers for the mums, there's pocket watches for the boys, where are they going to be stored, all that sort of thing. If I was sick on the day, you pass that over, so it gives the bride and bridegroom a little bit of safety.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And so you must have then, as a result, so you've done lots of weddings, and you mentioned before the Burns suppers. Have you got favourite events you like doing, or have you done any kind of weird and wonderful ones?
I would say it's a wedding. If I'm ever watching films of weddings in other countries where it's only suits and there's no kilts, I go, that just looks boring. And I find that a Scottish wedding, often when everyone arrives, they're maybe a bit tired from the travel. They haven't seen each other. They might not know people. At a Scottish wedding, all the guys these days have different socks, different shoes, different sporrans, different kilts, different tartans, different kilt pins, different waistcoats, and you can just talk for an hour. And some people might find it boring, but for the most part, people go, "Oh, why do you wear that tartan? Oh, it's my grandfather's tartan." Or they'll say, "My family just wears this tartan." And there's lots of little stories, and it's a really great icebreaker. And then later on, when the dancing starts, the dance floor just looks more exciting. There's all these flashes of tartan as kilts fly around. So you have the normal real wide wardrobe of different dresses, but you've also got the wide wardrobe of all the kilts. So it's to me, it's a great celebration, and there's usually lots of strange little traditions. There's a bagpiper there as well, and if people aren't from Scotland, it suddenly becomes almost like a tourist event for them. It's great.
No, I would agree. I have a friend who's a bagpiper, and he always says that's why he gets so many wedding invites, because he just goes and pipes for people. So gets more parties as a result. And so you are a Fraser as well, which is our clan of the month in January, and wearing your lovely Fraser hunting waistcoat.
Well
So
spotted.
you've missed the rug. There was a rug in the background too. But so tell us a bit more. Oh, there we go. A bit more about your Fraser heritage. Is that something you've always been interested in, or has that come to you with age, or what?
So back when I was in my first and second year of university, my twin brother and I were at Glenfiddich Distillery as tour guides. That was our summer job. And up until that point, we'd worn kilts. Our parents had always made sure that part of four brothers, all four of us would wear our kilts at weddings or christenings. But at Glenfiddich, it was a family-run distillery. The tours were free, and they were bilingual. And for a lot of people, particularly Americans and Germans, they'll have a whiskey that has been their whiskey for years. So to go to the distillery in Scotland is a big, big deal. And all the guides at Glenfiddich are made to wear kilts, but if possible, they'll get you made one in your tartan to really push this idea of family. So the Red Fraser, which is behind me just now, they said, well, we'd really like to have, it's nice having twin brothers working here. It gives the place a real family atmosphere. So they got us Red Fraser kilts. And so many people didn't know that Tartan was a surname. They had no idea, or that it was a geographical place. So you get people saying, well, why are you both in the same one? Why is that girl in a different one? And once you explained, oh, well, we're actually brothers, and this is our family tartan. This means our surname. Wow. And then after that, myself and my twin got incredibly interested in tartan and history and genealogy. So we've done various projects over the years, not only for the Fraser clan, but other names as well. Growing up, my oldest brother, he wears a Gordon kilt, and it is the kilt that our great grandfather wore when he was in the war. And it's a military kilts are always very thick, as you probably know. But for the brothers, we're always very jealous of my oldest brother because he got the Gordon kilt. It's a really, really good kilt. But he wears that because it's a family heirloom, if you will, and he'll pass that down to his kids, I imagine. But most of us all wear ancient hunting. But a few years ago, my father, because he worked in whiskey, retired, and he had a nice bottle of whiskey that he popped away in a cupboard somewhere, and he was wanting to go traveling with my mother. So they auctioned this whiskey, and they got quite a nice price for it because he wasn't sure what it was worth. So rather than just use the money on travel, he said, well, I'll tell you what, I want to get you all a nice present for your Christmas of tartan trews, but don't tell your brothers. And he said, I'd also like to register a tartan. So we spent a long time writing a story, because you need to write a little blurb to register one. And you look it up, it was registered on the 24th of April 2018, and it's called Lochside Fraser Tartan. And as we grew up in our summers in the far northwest Highlands, the whole family renovated a croft from basically a ruin to a nice place to go every summer. So it's a very special place to us. So we named the tartan after Lochside Cottage. But he's now had trews made for all four sons and the father. And then my brother Doogie, in secret, got a kilt made so that he'd get married in it as well. So we have this, that would be our favourite tartan, because all of us have that in trews.
What a story. Yeah, it's so interesting because Emily, who works with us and in our marketing department, is also a tartan designer. So we do some specialist tartans for people, and it's so interesting the stories people come to us with to then why they want to create these tartans. So,
they were saying
that's definitely one of our favourite things to do.
Yeah, there's now 18,000 tartans.
Yes. Oh, there's so many, and there's all the corporate ones and the event ones, and yes, and lots which are created and then never actually woven.
Yeah, they
create
said
them, and then the cost of weaving them is obviously a bit more. But nowadays, I mean, we can do short runs, so it's not too bad. If you want a few kilts, it's worth doing. But yeah, that's a great story. So I'll have to. You've not got a piece of your Lochside tartan there, then.
I can bring you through my trews, and you can see it if you want.
You'll have to send us a wee picture. We'll maybe see them afterwards.
I'll send you a picture.
Yes, that would be very good. So there is a real trend right now for exploring your roots and looking back into your heritage. What do you think about that? Do you think that's something that's going to carry on? Is it something we're going more back to because the world's become a bigger place, or?
I would say I think it's always going to be that way. During lockdown, obviously people had more time to spend in their homes and more time to be on the internet. But prior to that, it's similar to what I was saying about weddings. People are always very keen to know where they came from. And Scotland, we're incredibly lucky that we have all these names that have progenitors or heroes that the name is almost hidden in the tartan. So they can go, I'm a Fraser. And did you know the Frasers first arrived in Scotland in 1160? Things like that. And I've spoken to, working in hospitality, you'll always work with people from all over the world. And they're always fascinated that our names translate to things. And that name relates to a castle and a story and a battle. And there's so many things to it, so that we can create entire books on our names, but they might not be able to. Their name just means John. And they're almost jealous that we can do this. So yeah, I think within Scotland, particularly with the amount of overseas descendants we have, they're going to want to look into it. How did my great 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 grandfather leave Scotland or leave Ireland, and what was it that was happening at the time to make him go there? So no, I think it's going to be ongoing forever. People love finding out where they're from.
Yeah, and I think our ability to actually, well, we're now keeping records and we're discovering records and linking them all up where we maybe couldn't before. So yeah, I'm kind of halfway through my going. I went down one branch. My husband's branch is all quite easy to follow, but my side of the family is a bit more complicated. So yeah, I've been finding out all sorts of things, and I feel like that's something I appreciate much more as I get older. Whereas when I was a bit younger, I was probably a bit less.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was as
My
important.
my twin brother, he has, because he's in the army. He's actually based in Edinburgh Castle just now. That's his office.
Oh, what?
Um, but he spends a lot of time. He uses, if we have military family, he can actually dig deeper because he has access to the records in the
Yeah,
archive.
that's like my dad's side of the family is like that. Yeah, so it's really easy to look back. Yeah, no, it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, we do enjoy that. People always come to the shop and then we talk, show them all the different tartans, and we have all the books in there and everything for them to flick through, and that it's yeah. People, I think people come to work for us as a company and they think, oh well, yeah, I'll just be selling tartan. You're like, no, 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 there's so much to learn, and but that's what makes it an amazing job because every day you learn some new fact. And I really like the Clan of the Month thing because I'm now becoming a Fraser expert because that's what we're on for January. So reading all these things.
Any link to? I'm assuming you'll be digging deeper on Outlander.
Oh yes, well of course Outlander does come in there, yes. And you know things like Outlander, which is a hugely commercial thing, but actually really raises awareness of these things and is a kind of modern way of explaining them. But yes, oh no, the Frasers are in there. And we've actually done a special weave range of throws and things for which are all in the Fraser hunting weathered tartan, and because of their popularity through Outlander. So yeah. Yes, we always touch on Outlander. We like a nice story as well.
Good.
Um, and so there's lots of Fraser tartans. You've talked to us about your own one. But what do you think then of tartan in general and what it means to Scotland? You kind of touched on that before when you said about the weddings. But you know, people tend to see it the kind of chocolate box or shortbread tin, I suppose, of Scotland and the Stuart Royal tartan, and there's a lot
Yeah.
more to it. So
Well, it's obviously incredibly important. And as I mentioned earlier, I love that it is a conversation starter.
mm-hmm.
But in terms of my favourites, obviously, this is the tartan I wear as my kilt, or occasionally as a waistcoat. And then the Lochside Fraser tartan, it's funnily enough, I've only ever worn my trews for dinners. Whereas a kilt I save for weddings, but I've never mentally gone the kilt's for celebration, the trousers are for formal. But yeah, so Ancient Hunting Frasers is definitely there. I find this one behind me, the Red Fraser, is a bit garish, and
Yeah.
weirdly, whenever I see the Royal Stuart tartan, I sort of see it as it is the shortbread tin tartan.
Yeah.
It's almost like I don't know, the Nike or Adidas of tartans. It's everywhere, and you kind of want to be a bit unique. So no, I enjoy this one. It's quite subtle, not too in your face.
Yeah. No, and that's I think we find that as well with customers. It's really nice when they think they just have one tartan. You know, there is just one tartan, and then you say, oh no, there is actually a hunting or a weathered or a whatever, and you pull out all the different swatches. And you're like, oh wow, there's lots of choices. Yeah, well, my husband is a white is our surname, and so McGregor is the tartan. So we have the similar issue with the very garish red,
Yeah,
which
you go
looks
red.
fabulous, I think, on a kilt. But yeah, you don't want too much of it. But yeah,
Yeah, it
but
was.
again,
But funnily enough, in the Balmoral Hotel, one of the phrases that all the staff must use is aim for the name. So if you know the guest's name, use it because really people love hearing their own name. Even if they say they don't, they love it. So you've never met me and I go, good morning, Mrs. White, how are you? You you kind of double back and go, I've never met that man. How does he know my name? But you always shared it. And if there was a formal event on and there were tartans, I would be able to recognize quite a lot of them. And I would just, if a guest walked past, I'd say, good afternoon, Mr. Anderson. Are you looking for the wedding? And the person who was wearing the kilt would turn around and you know, his name might not be Anderson just because he's wearing an Anderson kilt. But if you got it right, you got this real wow factor of a guy turning around going, how did you know my name? Just a guess, Mr. Anderson. Then they would look at their tartan and go, ah, of course it is. That's how you do this.
Do you play guess the tartan then? We have a bit of that if we're ever anywhere and you're, ooh, now what tartan's that? And
Yes. Funnily enough, I get sent pictures, usually of clothing. A lot of interior, clothing designers will use it on the inner lining.
yes.
Primark use quite a few of them, but it's normally dress black Stuart. But people will say, "What is this?" And more often than not, there'll be some strange variant of black lines, red lines, and white lines, and you look at it and go, "It could be any one of 40 tartans."
Yeah. Well, we have Oren who works for us, who came to us as an apprentice at 16, and he has an incredible memory. And I don't know, he can just store all the tartans. So I mean, and then he'll just go, no, there's an extra white line there. That's the such and such, and yeah. So we go to him. If anyone emails in, which we get lots of emails, what is this? And yeah, we send it to Oren, and he tells us what it is.
He sounds like a tartan.
The guru. So your hotel's been shut, the Market Street Hotel's been shut, and you've been helping your brother then on a project. Do you want to tell us more about that? It sounds very exciting.
So back in 2018, 2019, start of 2019. So my oldest brother's called Jamie Fraser, just to push that out thing there. He has always wanted to open his own summer camp in Scotland, but in an American style. He worked in summer camps in America for about 19 years and loves the passion Americans have for pretty much everything. But really feels that Scotland, whilst we have similar things to summer camps, we don't do it in the same style. And it's just, they're amazing. If you've ever been to an American summer camp, they're very good. And the kids that go there have such a great summer. The only downside here is our weather is terrible. But he purchased this castle. Obviously, the bank owns most of it, but has managed to purchase this castle called Wedderley House, which originally was owned by Robert the Bruce himself. Was given as part of a marriage between Walter Edgar and the Sankers. So it's very much a borders stronghold, if you will. And if you look at the castle, it's what's called a Fort Alice, which is an old term for a fortified tower house. A lot of the time, they're called peel houses as well, and they're littered throughout the borders, usually built to hide in if there was border reaving going on, or as you could go in there and shoot at your enemies as well. But the Edgar clan, this would be their clan seat, and they owned the castle for 400 years, and they had to sell it because the family fell on hard times. But because they'd lived there for so long, and it was very much the Edgar's clan seat, they were really upset when they sold it. So the clan chief, when they sold it, crept back to the castle just after they sold it with an axe, and he smashed up the clan crest, which bears the year 1694, but it's all completely destroyed, but that crest is still there. So when you walk into the main door, it's up just up to your right, and it's amazing because you're looking at history, and you kind of go, it's a shame that's all broken, but when you know why it's broken, it's kind of romantic.
Yeah.
So Wedderley House it's a fortified tower, and then an extension of almost what would have been staterooms. But the plan was originally to be a summer camp, but as things gone on, him and my sister-in-law decided this is a great wedding venue. So they've restored. There's been a lot of restoration, and just trying to. Previously, it was more like a farm. So now it's a number of cottages, the main castle, and then probably about 4 or 5 separate places you could pop a marquee or have a ceremony. So I spent, from the moment lockdown was announced, I jumped in my car and went to the borders. So I was there for about 3 months or so, helping to babysit my nieces, building walls, painting, moving furniture, stripping back gardens. So that the gardens hadn't properly been maintained in 40 years. And nature has a habit of taking over things. But the estate's lovely. There's lots of trees that are 200-300 years old. You've got huge grounds that just they need maintained. And when it's cold, that's your time to strip everything back, because once spring hits, everything comes to life and starts getting even bigger. So now they're almost at the stage now where the semi-permanent marquee is going to go up. Once that's in, it's mostly just grounds maintenance after that. Up until this point, it's been really bringing it back to what it should have been as a stately home. From a clan point of view, there have been to date 11 different families that have lived in the house from the 1200s on to modern day. And my brother, I do a lot of clan histories as a hobby. So he commissioned me to do little histories for every single room, and they've named each room after a family that lived there. So there's Campbell, Elliot, Baird, Fraser's now, Bruce. So each bedroom, just a short history, so you can say, you know, when did they own the house? And there's been some great stories. There's one of the families that owned it were the Polworths, and the village of Polworth, which is where they take their name, has a hawthorn tree in the middle of the village, which was traditionally the village green. But hundreds of years ago, after you got married, it was traditional for couples from Polworth to dance around the hawthorn tree for good luck. But the hawthorn tree is still there, and it's under protection under Scottish law. You can't cut that tree down. It's very, very important.
Yeah. And I have realised I hadn't appreciated where your brother was, but that is so close to us. That's literally 20 minutes from our HQs. We're near Duns.
Oh yeah, Duns is
so yeah, and Polworth is 5 minutes drive from here. So I'm going to go and find that hawthorn tree now.
I think it's called the hawthorn. What is it called? There is a name for it. It has a special title.
No, I have some good friends there. I shall be asking them about that. Yeah, very interesting.
You should book. Sure, come on down.
Is he hoping then to be open for 2021?
Yeah. So what?
They're allowed to start up again. I mean, there are some smaller ones just now. But...
Yeah. So the first wedding they have booked is April, and what we found with the world situation is that anyone who had a wedding booked for 2020 had their wedding cancelled. So that caused them to rebook it. But what they found was they couldn't book the same venue the year later because it was already booked by someone else.
Yeah.
They also found that they couldn't book it the year after. So you have an entire year of displaced weddings. But you also have the brides and grooms from 2021, 2022 who haven't booked yet. So it's almost like a ripple effect of bookings. So they got lots of viewings, and then lots of people saying, yeah, we love this. We absolutely love the family aspect of it. There's normally, if people came to view, they'd have to have masks on and just walk around, and we wouldn't be near them. But they loved that, say, I was walking around with a baby on my back, my little niece, whilst stacking logs of firewood, or that my brother Jamie was holding my other niece and painting. They liked it that it's a living, breathing property, and it's not a city centre hotel.
Yeah.
So no, they've received a lot of bookings, and all going well, they will just be small weddings for 2021. But I think it's from June onwards, they have 9 weddings back to back. So no, it's good, and it's good for the industry, and it's nice to know people they're thinking about the future, and they're planning for these things.
Oh yes, definitely it is, isn't it? That's what we're all just put something in the diary. It's nice to know you've got something to look forward to, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because we've had lots of brides and grooms who will order our kilt. Oh no, hold on the kilts, we're not sure yet, or some who've then thought, do you know what, we're just not going to wait. We'll just have a tiny family wedding just now. So then they've got some little things just to make it really personal, and then they're going to have a big party later on. Or yeah, we've had some quite heartbreaking stories, but lots of amazing, very different things that people have done because they've had really small numbers. So yeah, good. Oh, that's so interesting. Thank you very much for joining me. I feel like I've learned a lot today. We've covered a lot of different things. So we look forward to celebrating the Frasers, and I look forward to coming to find the hawthorn tree in Polworth and paying your brother a visit to see all his hard work.
Well, we found a few people. We actually got an email. I do a little bit of social media for them. If I'm ever down, I'll make little videos of just what we're up to. So I keep an eye on what's coming in. But an American lady emailed saying, "Hi guys, I'm loving what's going on at Wedderley House. It looks amazing. My 8th great grandfather was a clan chief of Clan Edgar. Can you tell me a bit about this place?" My brother just sent it to me and went, "How do I respond to this?" If your name was Edgar, which means happy spear, incidentally, a simple Google will tell you that the Edgars come from Wedderley, amongst other places. But there's now an interest in it because it's no longer a farm; it's a place you could hire. I have a funny feeling there'll be an Edgar clan gathering there at some point.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Oh well, I look forward to that too. Good. Well, thank you very much.
Likewise, and happy Hogmanay when it comes.
Yes, anything special planned then, or is it the
Um,
quest whenever?
so I've got good friends who live down in New Haven on the beach. So we're going to take some firewood and have a little campfire on the beach. But the snow is still on in Leith just now. Going to have to wrap up warm. But yeah, just a nice little campfire, bringing the new year with a whiskey.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do. My sister and her kids, and we'll be barbecuing outdoors in the snow. So, sounds good.
Lovely.
Okay, thank you.
All the best.